Let him die. Those were the chilling words I overheard my own mother utter as I begged her to help Grandpa. Just hours earlier they'd learned, or so they thought, that he had cancer. But instead of mourning or compassion, they immediately turned into scavengers, dividing his estate as if he were already dead. There was no real grief, only greed masked as concern. But Grandpa wasn't dying. Not yet. He was watching. He was testing us all. When he finally stepped into the room, strong, alert, very much aware, their facades crumbled one by one. What followed was not just a revelation but a reckoning. The Rosenthal family appeared as if they'd stepped out of a glossy magazine. Elegant, wealthy, picture-perfect. But perfection is often just a carefully polished facade. Grandpa John, or Jonathan Rosenthal, was a retired war hero and a self-made man who transformed a small shipping business into a respected logistics empire. He raised 3 children, Eleanor, Harold, and Caroline, each entitled in their own way. His wife, Margaret, had passed away a decade earlier, and after her death, everything began to unravel. Eleanor, my mother, married a Wall Street broker and developed a taste for martinis and manipulation. Uncle Harold was a tax consultant who never missed a family gathering, especially when wills or inheritance were involved. Aunt Caroline was the artsy one, always moving from gallery to gallery, often low on funds and high on demands. And then there was me, Ava. I was Eleanor's daughter, raised more by Grandpa than by my own parents. I didn't wear designer shoes or attend private galas, but I sat at Grandpa's feet, listening to his war stories, his laughter, his regrets. We were close, closer than anyone else in the family truly understood or appreciated. Then one gray Thursday morning, everything changed. Grandpa called me, his voice gentle but serious. I remember the light drizzle against my window, the sudden loss of warmth from my coffee. Ava, he said softly, they think it might be cancer. There's a shadow on the scan. I clutched my phone tighter. Did they confirm it? I asked. Not yet. But I wanted you to hear it from me first, just in case. I dropped everything. Despite the pouring rain, I drove across town to his house, bringing soup, comfort, and a warm blanket. But when I arrived, the house was already filled with unfamiliar voices. My mother, aunt, and uncle, gathered as if summoned by the scent of a treasure chest. They weren't there to comfort him. They were huddled around the dining table, spread with spreadsheets and legal pads. Eleanor looked up and said, "Oh good. You're here. We were just discussing what's best for Dad financially." I was speechless. That evening, as Grandpa sat in his recliner pretending to nap, I helped him into his study. He locked the door behind us. "There's no cancer, Ava," he said quietly. "What?" I exclaimed. "I lied," he admitted. "It was necessary." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small recorder. I needed to see what they do. I needed proof of who they really are. And I needed someone I trust to help me carry out the truth. Saturday brought an unofficial estate meeting. The atmosphere in the Rosenthal household had shifted from grief to calculation. The living room became a strategy room. Harold arrived with an appraiser, suggesting they sell the lake house to simplify matters. Caroline handed out notes on property taxes, while Eleanor carefully labeled heirlooms with colored stickers. Grandpa sat silently in the corner, bundled in a shawl, observing everything, his final act of control. Every move was deliberate, a labored breath here, a grimace there. An old soldier on his last mission. Later that night, I asked my mother if they'd considered hospice or gentle caregiving. "He's old, Ava," she said casually, sipping white wine. "Maybe this is just nature's way. He's had a good run." Those words stung. Grandpa had given them everything, his strength, his sacrifices, and now they were treating him like a closing stock. On Sunday morning, Caroline brought a local pastor, Pastor Rick, to pray over Grandpa. But it was more a ceremonial send-off than a spiritual visit. "We should prepare," she whispered to me, patting my shoulder with a fake concern. "Closure is healthy." They dressed in black, played soft hymns on the piano. Yet the only person excluded from the morning's circle was Grandpa himself. Harold, now calling himself an executive, laid out a proposed timeline for selling off the properties. "The market's hot," he said confidently. "We should strike now." Caroline chimed in, "I want the silver tea set." "Mom promised it to me," I heard Eleanor reply. "You can have it," Eleanor said, and I'll take the safe deposit box. That was it. I couldn't bear it anymore. I excused myself and stepped out into the garden, screaming into my scarf, my chest tight with frustration and grief. Later that night I sat beside Grandpa, tears streaming down my face. "They've buried you before your time," I whispered. He squeezed my hand gently. "That's the point," he whispered back. Monday evening arrived, the final act. Grandpa asked me to set the table. He wanted one last family dinner. He told me to invite everyone. "Tell them it's urgent," he said. I quickly texted and called, and they arrived almost immediately, probably assuming he was about to make his final wishes or hand out last-minute checks. The table was laid with Grandma's old china, crystal glasses sparkling under the chandelier. The aroma of the meal was divine. I had cooked his favorites: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, rosemary vegetables. They arrived dressed in dark suits, polished shoes, with forced concern on their faces. "I hope he makes it through the night," Harold whispered anxiously. "He looks worse," Caroline noted. Then Grandpa stood slowly. "Before we eat," he announced, voice steady and commanding, "I have something to share." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a recorder, pressing play. The room filled with familiar voices, family members' voices I knew well, now echoing with betrayal. "Let's liquidate everything," the recording said. "He's practically gone already. Just let him die." Gasps rippled through the room, shock, silent horror. But then, with the regal poise of a king reclaiming his throne, Grandpa spoke clearly. "I am not dying. I never was." He took a breath, eyes blazing with purpose. "You were tested," he said. "And every single one of you failed." He looked directly at me. "Except Ava." He then reached into a sealed envelope and produced his latest will, notarized and legal. "All my assets, investments, properties, everything goes to Ava," he declared. "Not out of favoritism but justice." Chaos erupted. Caroline shot to her feet. "This is emotional manipulation," she accused. Harold pointed accusingly. "You tricked us," he said bitterly. Eleanor sat frozen in stunned silence. In the days that followed, chaos reigned. Mom called the family lawyer, challenging the will. But the lawyer confirmed it was legally sound. Harold tried to persuade me to share the inheritance, calling it a fair redistribution, but I stayed silent. I focused solely on Grandpa. We traveled to places he'd always wanted to revisit: Paris, Kyoto, Cape Town. He laughed more in those years than I'd seen in a lifetime. We restored the vintage Mustang. He taught me how to fly fish. We created memories richer than any vault could hold. "You gave me life," he had once told me, "when I thought I was surrounded by death." He passed away peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by warmth, not vultures. After the funeral, an honest one this time, I established the Rosenthal Trust in his name. It funded scholarships for underprivileged students, built libraries, and supported veteran therapy programs. The family scattered. Eleanor remarried and moved across the country. Harold faded into obscurity within corporate circles. Caroline opened a boutique in another city, bitter and distant. But I carried Grandpa's memory with me, not in wealth or deeds but in honor. Because when the masks fell and greed was exposed, the truth remained resilient. And that truth was love.